Hey there! Do you often feel annoyed by your opponent pinning your pieces? In today's video, we're going to study some cases on which we can break the pin in the most spectacular possible way, which is by sacrificing material. So let's start with the first position, which features nothing more than a queen sacrifice. So here white seems to be doing perfectly fine. White has an extra pawn, and this queen on e6 looks quite active. It is pinning the rook on f7, which by the way, here we have an absolute pin because the rook is protecting the king on g8. So this is in a way good and bad. Since we have an absolute pin, we know that in this case, this rook from f7 cannot be moved, so we can rule out any move by that rook. But here we can notice some details in white's position. First of all, the first rank might potentially be weak because black is eyeing the f1 square with 3 pieces. Even though the rook on f7 is pinned, we know that this idea of playing rook to f1 might be an idea once the pin is broken. And in this case, we cannot break the pin easily, at least not at first sight because the queen on e6 is not being attacked. Here we could play a move like king to h8, but even though we break the pin, now the bishop on d4 might be eyeing the king on h8, and here white can play a simple move like h3, giving some space for the king, and white still keeps an extra pawn. But considering that rook to f1 might be a very strong idea, and that white's pieces are actually a bit loose, as opposed to black pieces that are all protecting each other, here black played the fantastic move queen to d7. So simply attacking the queen on e6, and also eyeing the rook on a4. And I say that this is fantastic because after queen takes e7, which by the way white doesn't have any options because if white doesn't wait and plays a move like queen to a6, defending the rook, then black will play the move rook to f1, and after rook takes and rook takes, the game is over because this is a checkmate. So here white has to trade on d7, and I say that this is a spectacular move because black's idea is not to capture the queen on d7. In that case, white still keeps the better position with an extra pawn, but black's idea is to go rook to f1, and after rook takes and rook takes, black is forcing the checkmate. So in the previous position, black broke the absolute pin by sacrificing another piece, but let's evaluate another position. Here, we see that the knight on f6 is pinned by the bishop on g5. So moving the knight to a random square like h5 would be bad because white would capture the queen on d8. But here, there's a relative pin because moving the knight somewhere, in this case, is a legal move. So whenever we have a relative pin, we need to be aware that there's a difference because moving the piece that has a relative pin is a legal move. So at least quickly we should double check if we can still move that piece. So here in this position, black has many ways to break this pin. h6 and g5 might be an idea. Playing bishop to e7 is another way to break the pin, but in this case, we would bring a bishop from c5 to e7, and the bishop on c5 looks way more active. But here, black has other stronger ways to break this pin. One of them is going bishop takes f2, just winning a pawn, and the idea is that after king takes, knight to g5, gives a check, and black will then capture the bishop, having an extra pawn and a better position. But in this position, there's even a more spectacular way to break the pin, and I would like you to let me know in the comments how can black break this pin in a very flashy way. Let's now evaluate another very instructive position. Here it is white to play, and white played the move d5. And here black, seeing that the knight on f3 is pinned, played the move knight to e5. And this move is not particularly dangerous because here white can easily break the pin, for example by going bishop to e2, and still have a perfectly playable position. But here again we have a relative pin, so moving the knight is a legal move. Even though moving the knight to any random square is actually bad because black would capture the queen on d1, here white played a very strong move knight takes e5. And here black has to take the queen, otherwise white also has the idea to take the bishop. For example, after d takes e5, queen takes e4, white simply gets an extra piece. But after bishop takes e1, now we need to evaluate this position. Even though white sacrificed the queen, we see that the light squares on this diagonal are actually quite weak because black's bishop is on d1, and here the move bishop to e5 is actually very strong because the only way to block this check is by going queen to d7. And here white captured with the bishop, giving a check, very forcing way, and here actually black resigned because black is going to lose a lot of material. After king to d8, one easy way to go is knight takes f7, and after king takes, white is in no hurry to capture this rook, so here white can play the move king takes e1, white gets an extra piece, and on the next move we'll capture the rook on h8. And I want to finish with a very spectacular position on which we have several pins from both sides. So here in this position, it is black to play. Black seems to be doing very well because this knight on d5 is actually pinned. There's the idea to even capture it because black has 3 pieces piled up against knight. But it is also important to notice that the knight is pinned, so there's even no hurry to capture the knight. Because after bishop takes d5, white gets this very strong idea of going rook to d2, and now it is white the one pinning a piece on the d5 square. So now white is going to capture back on d5 and even have very good control of the light squares because this bishop on d5 is going to drop. So since the knight on d5 is pinned and white gets this idea to go rook to d2, black played the very strong move c3. So now rook to d2 is not possible and black simply has the idea to capture on d5. And here white's position looks very bad, but white still found a very nice resource and played the move rook to f3. And now the idea is that the knight on e5 is pinned, so capturing on f3 is actually quite bad, because after bishop takes d6, white gets a material advantage. But here black played the move bishop takes e5, winning a piece, but again white insisted with this idea of playing the rook to the d file, again trying to use the pin against the knight on e5. So here white's idea is to capture back on d5 and to reestablish the material balance. But here again we see that the knight on e5 is pinned, but we have a relative pin. So again we need to consider the idea of moving the knight, at least briefly, because it is a legal move. And here actually capturing the rook on d3 is very strong. On f3 it was not a strong capture, but on d3 is actually a winning move, and here white, who is a very strong player, resigned. The point is that after bishop takes d6, black gets knight to f2, forking the queen and the king, and after king to g1 and knight takes, black got a very large material advantage. Even after bishop takes, black simply moved, and now one of these 2 bishops is going to drop. So this was a very amazing game on which both sides used or tried to use sacrifices in order to break pins. And by the way, if you like attacking games featuring sacrifices, you might want to check this video on the right.